We continue through the church season of Epiphany. As you remember, Epiphany is that time when the church celebrates Christ's presentation to the world. And as Christ was presented to the world, Christ also has presented to you. And in that presentation, we talk about the fact that God has and continues to allow Christ to live in us, to dwell in us. And so for the last couple of weeks and for a few weeks to come yet, we're going to be talking about what it means for Christ to live in you. Now, this morning we deal with a story that's really familiar to most folks who read the Bible. It's the story of the wedding in Cana of Galilee. And you can have all kinds of fights among all kinds of Christians about whether it was really wine or not and how much it was and why Jesus meant it. We're not going to deal with any of that today. Let me suggest that the power of the story of the wedding of Cana in Galilee is that the central figure, the Christ, in that particular story becomes an agent of the unexpected. That because he shows up, a number of things happen that we would not normally expect to have happen in the course of a story like this. And we can't go into all of them, even though it's a short story. There's a lot of unexpected things that happen, but I want to just mention four of them briefly. First of all, remember that among everything else, Jesus is a good Jewish boy who loves his mother dearly. Okay? You have to remember that because it makes it all the more unusual and all the more unexpected when the wine runs out. Because remember that Mary and Jesus and the disciples are just guests here. There's nothing in the story to indicate that they are in any way, shape, or form related to the folks who are there. They have nothing to do except they're showed up as guests of the wedding. And the wine runs out, and Mary goes to her son, not to the Messiah, not to her son, and she says, Jesus, they've run out of wine. And the first unexpected thing that happens is Jesus' response to that statement. In the scripture, it is recorded as, Mother, what does that have to do with you and I? I would suspect, although I don't know, that if I had said something like that to my mother in response to a question, what she would have heard was not, Mother, what does that have to do with you and I? But, Mom, get off my back. I don't want to deal with this right now. I mean, it is unexpected in some ways that Mary very clearly has made a request of Jesus in the comment that they've run out of wine, and he basically says, I'm not doing anything about it. And that is not the expectation that we would assume that a son would make to a mother that he loved, let alone the response that we would expect of Jesus, one who cares deeply for people around him. So there's something really unexpected, you see, about the refusal. And of course, then the amazing thing that happens is she doesn't argue with him. She just goes to the servants. And she says, do whatever he tells you to do. And this is the second really unexpected thing. Because you do understand in this particular culture, women really didn't have a lot of power. I mean, in the course of what's happening at that wedding, the servants, male servants particularly, probably had more of a say about what was going to happen than some female guest who just showed up because it was a wedding. It's absolutely unexpected, you see, that the servants would pay any attention to her at all. Absolutely beyond the realm of possibility. That when Mary says to the servants, do whatever he tells you, that they would go, okay, we can do that. What an unexpected thing to have happen. First, it was unexpected that Jesus would refuse his mother, and secondly, it was unexpected that the servants would listen to her at all. And of course, then there's the third big unexpected in the story, the one that we all remember. The unexpected of taking these containers that were filled with water and all of a sudden having them transformed into wine. Not by anything that Jesus says. He simply says to the servants, bring the containers, fill them with water, and then he says, dip some out, and all of a sudden it's not just wine, it's good wine. It's the best wine. We know that because the servants talk about the fact that normally they serve the best stuff, the best stuff last, and say the bad stuff for after everybody's drunk and they won't notice. This is the best stuff. See, it's unexpected that all of a sudden this water would become wine simply because Jesus said, draw the water and then dip some out and take it to the steward of the wedding feast. And finally, of course, it is unexpected that the good stuff would be saved for last, at least in that culture and in that time. So there's all kinds of things you see in this story where Jesus, as the central figure, is the agent of the unexpected. When we get to the end of the story, we find something else that's kind of surprising. It says that this was the first miracle that Jesus ever did. And see, all of a sudden we kind of have a new, unexpected definition of what constitutes a miracle. We could take a poll in here, and I guess we get a lot of different responses about what is miraculous. Let me suggest that, at least in this story, a miracle is that thing which is unexpected, which provides a blessing. A miracle is that thing which is unexpected, which provides a blessing. It's a little unexpected that Jesus would tell his mother, what does that have to do with me? But in the long run, because it led her to the servants and moves the story along, that unexpected thing, small as it was miraculous in itself because it helped provide the blessing. It was unexpected that the servants would have listened to Mary. And yet in the unexpected nature of what they did, you see, people are blessed. The miracle happens. It's unexpected that Jesus would turn the water into wine, but he does. And in that unexpected act, people are blessed. It's what we call a miracle. So here's what I think, folks. I think that if Jesus lives in us, and Jesus is an agent of the unexpected, and I think you find that throughout the stories of his life, then maybe just possibly one of the real implications of the Christ living in us is that God calls us to be agents of the unexpected. That God calls us in some ways to be purveyors of miracles in the midst of God's world. Small blessings that make a difference precisely because they are unexpected. Sometimes we might be agents of the unexpected because, like Jesus early in the story, we say no. We offer a clear-cut refusal to what the world wants, what the world expects, what other people want or expect of us as individual Christians or as a church. Maybe, just maybe, one of the most miraculous things that could happen in the world today would be the church finally standing up in the midst of a world and saying, we're different than you are. We are called to be different and look different and act different precisely because Christ lives in us. Maybe one of the real miracles of the world would be the church separating itself from the world enough to say, we're going to live in the world, but we're not going to be of the world. That we are going to very clearly, when it is necessary, say to the world, this is wrong. You can't do this anymore. Or conversely, maybe it's the church finding the will to stand up and say this is right when the world says it's wrong. Maybe one of the most miraculous things we could do as individuals and as the church is to be an agent of the unexpected no in the midst of the world. Maybe, just maybe, one of the ways that the church and individual Christians could be agents of the unexpected, working those little miracles of blessing in the world, would be as the servants did. Be listeners in the midst of a world where all too often people want to talk. Maybe part of being agents of the unexpected is stepping back when we so desperately want to say something in response to, in reaction to, and say, no, we're going to think about that. Or better yet, we're going to pray about that. Or better yet, before we say anything or do anything, we're going to sit back and let God work in us and through us to figure out what it is we're supposed to say and do. Maybe, just maybe, one of the things this story tells us is that the best way to be an agent of the unexpected, to help work those little miracles of blessing in the world, is to first of all be good listeners to those around us, to the Spirit within us, to the God who would invite us to help redeem creation. Maybe the third way to be really great agents of the unexpected is to be those folks who take seriously that we are called to transform the world, just as Jesus transformed the water into wine. Maybe to be an agent of the unexpected is to take seriously that God calls us to participate with God in the transforming of the world. To believe that somehow the power of God in us is enough. That we can walk out into the world and make a positive change, not for our benefit or the benefit, but to the honor and glory of God. See, I would suspect that if we ask most people sitting in most churches today, do you have the power to transform the world? The answer will be, well, not me. I'm too old, I'm too poor, I'm not smart enough, I'm too smart, whatever it is. And God comes along in this story and says, the power of Christ in you is that you can be an agent of the unexpected. That God places in you the power to transform the world to the honor and glory of God. And lastly, I suspect that to have the Christ, the agent of the unexpected, living in us is to mean that we can be an agent of the unexpected. And that part of that is always being committed to excellence. That it is always about the best, not the worst. It is always about what is greatest, not what is adequate. And sometimes I think we've lost that in the church. You know, how's your church? Well, it's pretty good. But see, I don't think God ever calls the church to be pretty good. I don't think God calls any of us to be just pretty good. I think He calls us to be great. In His power and in His love and in His grace. And maybe the church and maybe individual Christians to be agents of the unexpected means that we don't settle for what is adequate or appropriate or good enough, but that we commit ourselves each moment to living our lives for the best. And in so doing, we create those little miracles that are blessings in the lives of others. So how does this work? What would it mean in one area of life if we decided to take seriously that the Christ who lives in us is an agent of the unexpected, and therefore we too can be agents of the unexpected? Received an email this week from one of my fellow students in my doctoral cohort. I've read some of her stuff before. Her name is Lauren Stanley. She's an Episcopal missionary who was in the Sudan and was then in Haiti when the earthquake hit and is now serving in this country. In addition, she's been a writer for years. And she sent me this, and I immediately wrote back and said, Lauren, can I use that on Sunday? It's not the end-all and be-all, but it may be one way, in one area of life, when we can take seriously that we are called to be agents of the unexpected. And it's a pretty simple thing. But see, I don't think miracles have to be big things. I think miracles can be small things that bless others, that are unexpected. That's the nature of a miracle. This is what Lauren writes. She says, the other day I received a phone call from the garage where I had had my car worked on twice in 2 weeks. I was already on the phone, so I couldn't take the call, but as soon as possible, I listened to the message, fearing something else was wrong with my car. Hi, this is the owner, the business said. You had your car back for service last week. Just calling to say thank you for bringing it back. Thank you. That's it. Just a quick message meant to build a relationship with a new customer. That's the level of discourse I would like to see in this country. A simple thank you rather than the diatribes that fill the airwaves and jam the social networks. Especially right now, in the aftermath of the Tucson shootings, vitriol dominates our lives. Fingers are pointed and awful words are being said about the shootings, about who said what that might have incited a mentally ill young man to kill 6 and wound 14 others. But our need to harm each other, to sear each other's souls with words of hatred, isn't limited to the shootings. If you listen to the ubiquitous talk shows, you know what I mean. Their words of hatred are shouted hourly, threats are made daily. Vitriol is the currency, and we have only ourselves to blame. For we are the ones who listen and who support and who participate. Or look at Facebook, where seemingly innocuous events cause people to declare their desire to castrate someone, and that was for a snow closing, to put others in the crosshairs, those generally center on politics, to get yet another person who is somehow disappointed or displeased us. And dip into, if you dare, Twitter, where people threaten each other daily. I pray that those who tweet are not seriously considering acting upon their threats, but who knows these days. If nothing else, the shootings in Arizona have shown that we have lost the ability to communicate with kindness. In our rush to comment, we have forgotten how to set a guard over our mouths, how to keep our tongues from evil and our lips from speaking deceit, as the psalmist warns us. We have forgotten that as beloved children of God, which all of us are, whether we like it or not, the writer of Proverbs warns us that we must watch over our mouths and our tongues if we want to keep out of trouble. Rash words are like sword thrusts, Proverbs says, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. The writer of Ephesians follows up on that. Let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building up, as there is need, so that your words may give grace to those who hear. Give grace to those who hear. What would that were happening right now in this country particularly? What has happened to us that we have forgotten how to give grace? How to speak words that build up? Why are we so eager to blame, to hurt, to disparage? And when? When did we stop teaching people to be careful with their words? This is not a diatribe against anyone in particular on the left or right. This is not about politics or gun control or even the appalling lack of care for those who are mentally ill. This is a discussion, I hope and pray, about how we can find our way to being decent to each other. We spend an inordinate amount of time disparaging others and speaking words of violence. Really, who in the world wants to castrate someone over a snow closing? Does the person who wrote that even know how to do it or what it means? We curse, we threaten, we denigrate, we abuse, we attack, we use words to hurt, to injure, to wound. Why? What purpose does it serve? It might make us feel better in that moment, but when we look at what we have wrought, an atmosphere of hatred, do we still feel better then? St. James wrote, with the tongue we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this ought not be so. St. Peter added, those who desire life and desire to see good days, let them keep their tongues from evil and their lips from speaking deceit. Our words, our comments have meaning and they have impact. And when we choose to speak dark words, are we really surprised when darkness envelops us? But when we speak words of grace, healing results. Isn't that what we want in our lives? And if so, isn't that what we should want in the lives of others? It really isn't that hard to speak words of grace. A simple thank you, such as the message left for me by the business owner, can be so powerful. If we want to improve our lives and the lives of those around us, if we want to heal our ailing world, first we need to guard our mouths. I want to point to one thing that Lauren said in the midst of that I think has everything to do with being an agent of the unexpected in the midst of the world. An agent of the unexpected defined as those little miracles that bless the lives of others and that bless God's creation. I said they don't have to be really big things. In the middle of that, I hope you picked up on what she said about the nature of the discussion. She said, this is a discussion, I hope, I pray, about how we can find our way to being decent to each other. What an unexpected thing in the midst of the world. That individuals as individuals, and more than that, that entire communities of faith, indeed the universal church, might surprise the world by simply saying, what we're going to commit to over the next 6 months or a year is just being decent to each other. Forget about everything else. Let's just shock the world by deciding that our number one goal is going to be that we're going to be decent to each other. That's pretty unexpected. But that's something that we as agents of the unexpected can do with the power of God in our lives. It will, I believe, happen as we sometimes say no to a world that expects us to operate in other ways. It will happen as we truly listen to God and to each other, guarding our words, as Lauren says. It will happen if we believe that simply by being decent to each other can transform the world as the water was transformed into wine. I think it will happen as we proclaim to the world that being decent to each other, as small as it may seem, is really what it means to live excellent lives with the Christ in us. It is a most unexpected thing that Christ loves me. It is a most unexpected thing that he chooses to live in me, because I sure don't deserve it. As an agent of the unexpected in us, he allows us to be agents of the unexpected in the world, that we might, just for starters, be decent people, not only in the presence of God, but in the presence and for the transformation and love of each other. Amen.